We
Yeah.
built Cpayant to be a mobile app to take care of intercontinental cross-border payments. So instead of you having to wait for more than 1 week, it happens in less than 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Because we are using permissionless blockchain technology to make that happen.
This is the Mooncast.
See you, space cowboy.
Bro, Wagwan. I'm good, man. I'm good. Just busy, man. Busy. You know, like it's ridiculous. I just got done with another podcast now, and then right after this, I have another meeting. And so yeah, it's ridiculous, bro. Like I never have time. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it takes me like 2 days to respond to your WhatsApp messages and all that, So
yeah, bro, it's ridiculous. It's like when you have 75,000 different messages and emails to go through, and then yeah, bro, my days are literally meetings and emails and messages all day.
You should get an assistant. You should get a PA that helps you reclaim some time back, So
Yeah. My girl's helping me with some of that stuff. But yeah, I don't want to hire anybody yet because I did before previously, and that person was trash. And I was
then you need to put in more effort into actually getting somebody with quality, because there's some quality guys out there, So
yeah, the problem is trying to find those quality guys.
You need to make time. Recruitment is very important as well.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, man. You're right, and it's something I need to focus on. It's kind of hard, with especially with Moonboy, because it's more of it's a consulting. So consulting is not scalable because the fact that people are buying you.
Yeah.
You
probably have to automate some of the processes then.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Even if you try to automate the process, because I've tried this before. Like I've actually was talking with Arsim about this, and I was like, look, how do you, because he had a consulting business too as well, and he was trying to figure out how to scale it. And I was like, bro, how do you scale a consulting business? And it's one of those tricky questions to really not a lot of people have the answer to, because people are buying you effectively. Right? So it's like a lawyer, right? When you want to speak to your lawyer, you don't want to speak to their associate. You want to talk to the lawyer directly. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so this is the issue that I'm facing.
Then you have to trade more time. Then therefore you don't have a choice but to trade your time then.
Exactly. So this is the problem that I'm facing with Moonboy. It's just it's taking up a lot of my time, and then I have Fast Track. We have now 10 clients, and we're working on now trying to expand into West Africa, like I told you to. So yeah. But dude, man, how are you, man? Welcome to the Mooncast, man.
Thank you very much. It's been a long time coming. We were supposed to do this some time back, but I mean, it's been postponement, and finally here we are. So yeah.
Yeah. Yo, I don't know if you've seen some of the development that's happening right now in Nigeria, but I saw that it just disallowed the ability to be able to use Binance, Kraken, I think Coinbase as a crypto exchanges.
Yeah, it's funny how it feels more like gaslighting from the government to the people. It makes no sense, right? So it's the way politicians behave. They sort of shirk responsibility from what they are responsible of doing, and then trying to create a narrative that is totally not related to what's actually going on down on the ground, trying to more or less gaslight the population into saying, okay, these are the guys that are causing the issue. Why the issue really is more because of the policies that they put in place, and the fact that they sort of printed trillions of naira a few months ago on beneficial government spendings, which therefore caused some hyperinflation over the last period of time, which has absolutely nothing to do with crypto. But then, the easy culprit, right, to call the dog a bad name and hang it. That's basically what has been done to those exchanges. So it's rather unfortunate. Having been in the crypto space and blockchain space for years now, I've seen that the easy culprits are those that actually deal directly with cryptocurrency and exchanges and all those thoughts, right? So from experience, those are the most uncertain aspect of cryptocurrency, even though that's a low-hanging fruit for people to get into blockchain/Web3. So they make money, and they are more or less easy culprits for such, how do I put it? that's a dystopian dystopian
Dystopian knees, huh?
I'm not a politician, so I don't know go in that direction. But then I think it's totally gaslighting of the government to the people trying to say these are the guys causing the issues when it has absolutely nothing to do with them. Because sincerely speaking, the size of people, the size of crypto transactions in that jurisdiction is absolutely minuscule, or absolutely tiny compared to the entire GDP. It has absolutely nothing to do with cryptocurrency. Absolutely nothing to do with it. But then it's basically more of irresponsible fiscal policy over the last couple of months, if I would say that. But then it is what it is.
Yeah, it's super interesting for me because how long have you been doing business in Africa?
Okay, I've been since I go into blockchain, I've not really done business in Africa, right? But I have an
Okay.
idea what African. So since 2016, 2017, I've been doing global businesses, right? But then I'm very familiar with the terrain. Like, I mean, I started working in the continent like after my undergrad, probably more than 10 years ago. So I started off in the banking sector, right? So I understand the financial and fiscal space to a larger extent, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean, even though I don't directly most of the time, I mean, prior to now, do direct business on the continent because most of my projects had always had a global outlook. I understand what's going on, and having a good understanding of what's going on is why we set up Cpayant to then address certain challenges that we've observed over the years
Yeah.
in terms of cross-border payments on the continent itself, right? So yeah, I mean, so give or take, I've known the continent's business for more than 10 years. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so with the financial sector experiences you have, can you speak to that? Like how different is it the financial sector and the financial economy in Africa, or maybe you can speak directly about Ghana versus how it is, in a lot of Western nations, and you look at the structure of how it is, how it works, how it functions.
All right. So I mean, beyond now, we would say that there's a bit of disadvantage in the sense that currencies in Ghana, for instance, the Ghana cedi and other
Yeah.
African currencies are not base currencies for international trade.
Yeah.
There's a constant need for government to always have forex cover. And when the government says they need forex cover, it means largely they need US dollars in the coffers of the central bank to be able to fund. So they tell you we have 2 months import cover or 1 month import cover, basically, because most of the countries of the continent now are more or less import dependent. So they are net
Interesting.
importers as opposed to being exporters. Thus, they get to deplete their dollar resources for forex exchange, international trade, even amongst themselves, because
Wow.
local currencies of the continent are not basal currencies for international trade, right? So even African countries use US dollar as the base currencies for international trade. Sometimes they fall back on the Great British Pound or the euro, but it's largely the US dollar, right? So that's what mostly drives these things. So because they are mostly dependent on, there's that consumerism which is taking hold because of the US styled capitalism that goes on. And unfortunately, most of these countries do not manufacture enough to export. Right. So they do import, right? That's what happens. Right.
Yeah.
But then there are a few countries on the continent that are still pretty much net exporters, but there are very few, right? So we have a few in Eastern and Southern Africa, but most parts of West Africa, they are net importers, right? But then there are still some commodities that are more or less still very much intra-Africa trade, right?
Yeah.
Like beef and all of those things that the likes of Burkina Faso and a few other countries are well known for. So they do Niger and all of those Sahelian West African countries.
Yeah.
Are more or less very good with beef, right? So they're able to do that trade within themselves without having to go externally out of the continent. But then again, it's still more or less dollar-based transactions for these cross-border payments, right? So
Why is it okay? So I have two questions. One, why not just then make an intracontinental currency sort of like the euro has in Europe? Or two, why not just then uniformly agree upon Bitcoin as that great neutralizer? It's liquid enough. It's number 10 asset now in the world, so Those are two
I
options.
only agree about Bitcoin. I'll start from there. There's a high chance that might not happen. I wouldn't
Yeah.
say never because I'm not someone who believes in never, but there's a high chance that it's very close to never happening
Yeah.
because, as a matter of fact, governments do not want to lose their sovereignty to an external currency that they know nothing about, right? So that they can control. That's not centralized. Governments like centralized power. So as long as there's political institutions, I doubt that they will actually surrender their sovereignty in terms of financial control to Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah, but it
now
doesn't.
let's
Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off there, but I just want to say because it's a very interesting conversation to have. But yes, they would lose some control, but if you had one uniformly agreed upon medium of exchange that couldn't then be corrupted by somebody else, because that's part of the issue, right? If you're using US dollar, there's
yeah,
still
I'm
counterparty
getting
risk.
there. It is
Okay.
very ironical that you put cannot be corrupted in politicians in one sentence. So it's very funny because politicians are inherently corrupt. It doesn't matter what part of the globe they are from. Probably it doesn't matter because
Yes,
they're Africa. Even politicians in the West are corrupt. We have
exactly. This
the
this is
system
the
of
point.
lobbying, the system of lobbying in the Western countries that is clearly bribery and corruption, but then they call it lobbying. And
Exactly.
because there's no such terminology on the continent, we call it bribery. It's the same thing. Politicians are the same. They're cut from the same cloth, irrespective of where they are from, geography, race. They are all the same people. Thus, you do not put no corruption
Yes.
and politicians in the same sentence. It
I
doesn't.
think you misunderstood me. I didn't say that the US dollar wasn't corrupt. I said that Bitcoin wasn't corrupt.
Yeah. So
Right?
let me get to the point. So no
Yeah.
politician, even in the US, would allow you to use Bitcoin because
They
even the
already
US.
are. They already are. They're doing it in El Salvador. So
No,
there's a
the US is not El Salvador. Only
yeah,
few
but I'm saying
politicians like the guy in was El Salvador, over 200 countries in the world, and you're talking about just one.
no, there's a couple others that are considering it now, right? To
Yeah,
onboard it because they're looking at the case study of what El Salvador is doing, and they're saying, "Oh, this looks like it's
you
working."
seem to have a lot of faith in politicians, right? So these are unicorns, right? These politicians
Yeah,
we're talking about, El Salvador president, and the rest are just unicorns. They're not
yeah,
they're not the normal politician, right? So
yeah,
that's what it is. So I doubt that politicians generally, not just in Africa, generally globally, majority of them would surrender their sovereignty um to tech platforms to run their country fiscal policy. No,
yeah.
that might not happen. But then back to the point of using a single currency on the continent. Now let's not forget that even in Europe, it took quite a long time for the euro to become single currency on the continent. It took a long time.
Yeah.
Now, this has been in discussion for almost 2 decades now on the continent, especially in West Africa, right?
Mm,
So West Africa, when I was working in the bank, in Zenith Bank Ghana, Zenith Bank is one of the leading banks of the continent. So I worked in the Ghana subsidiary. The West African Monetary Institution was in Accra, is still in Accra, Secretariat. So that was supposed to be a single currency for the ECO,
mhm.
right? That was supposed to be an ECO currency. And then arrangements were far advanced. The West African WAMI was more like a client of ours in my sector in Zenith Bank, right? So I actually had first-hand knowledge of what was going on. And so the English-speaking West Africa, which was with about 6 countries, which is Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia, the Gambia, and one other country I've forgotten. I think it's Equatorial Guinea, Portuguese-speaking Guinea. In one of them, all agreed to have one currency. The Francophones were not included because they all had control from France,
Mhm.
the CFA franc. So it was a bit difficult for them to
Yeah.
do that. But the English-speaking African countries were to have a single currency. So it was almost done, about almost a decade. It was supposed to go into effect about a decade ago. But then there are those bizarre thresholds that each country should meet in terms of inflation rates, in terms of GDP growth rates, and all of those things, right? That some of the countries had not met yet. So it slowed down the implementation or rolling out of that project. And when most of these countries began to meet the threshold that was set to make it a healthy currency, like they had in Europe, then the African Union. So this was being run by ECOWAS, which is the Economic Community of West African States, right? Which is based off countries in West Africa. The way we have COMESA in is it in Eastern. COMESA is in Eastern Africa, which is it's in the Community of East African States as well, right? So
Yeah.
they have this, but ECOWAS seems to be more advanced more far advanced in terms of regional blocks as compared to the other blocks in the continent. So whilst ECOWAS was about to implement this, then the African Union then stated that they were looking at an entire continental single market, which has culminated into the ASC FTA now that we have. So the first step is to make it a borderless continent in terms of trade.
Yes.
Which then advanced to borderless continent in terms of movement of humans, and then ultimately in terms of a single currency. So that's why it's been delayed. But let's also not forget, as I mentioned earlier, that it didn't take Europe 1 day or a decade to make it happen. I think it took Europe about 3 decades for them to actually get a single currency. So I guess the continent is on the path of getting a single currency. Additionally, let's not forget that majority of the continent was under colonial rule less than 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So pretty much you still try, most of these countries only got political and democratic stability just a few years ago. Even some of these countries have slipped back into military rule. Some of them justifiably, depending on who you're talking to, and some of them maybe not justifiably. I don't know. I don't want to have to say my opinion in that regard. But then, so yeah. We shouldn't forget that these countries are still pretty much new. Some got independence. Even South Africa got independence in '94.
Yeah.
Right. So pretty much new. Right. So it's taken some time for it to be done, but it will be done because there are new crops of leaders that are more or less forward thinking. Right. So, and there are even old crop of leaders that are still forward thinking. So everybody might have their opinion, but personally, I think the likes of Paul Kagame of Rwanda is quite a forward thinking leader. And in that regard, and there are a few others. I think there's a president in Botswana as well who is actually doing well, and I think there's a new one in Zambia as well. So yeah, so I'm sure the continent will get there, but in the meantime, we have to do what we have to do. And first of all, we have to get the economics right and be less dependent on imports and begin to manufacture, become self-sustainable countries, and then begin to export. Even if you do not export outside of the continent, export amongst themselves, right? And that's why the single market has now been formed. So hopefully this would encourage more countries to begin to manufacture and then export, as opposed to being more or less US-style capital driven and be more service dependent and then consumerism and all of those things, right? So when at that point, then they might begin to agree on using probably their own fiduciary currencies and not begin to look at forex cover of US dollar reserves in the central banks of how many months cover you have. And that also has a strong effect on how much the currency depreciates. Right?
Yeah.
So that's my thought on it, really.
Why do you think that because we have the human capital, so why are we struggling to be able to then export more than import? What do you think the reason is behind that?
All right, so you might have all of the human capital. If you don't have the right policies, what then do you do with the human capital? If the policies do not encourage growth in certain sectors that can manufacture and export, that's one.
Yeah.
2. Now, let's say you have the policies. Having policy is one thing. Implementation on the ground is another. And one thing most African administrations have been known to lack is they could have all of the fanciful policies and all of the fanciful regulations, but is there real implementation on the ground? Is there lazy implementation being done? Right. So now that comes down to the quality of leadership and the quality of people who go into politics. The average African, the average intellectual African tries to avoid politics. Because they are of this conversation that I don't want to be a politician. Politics is dirty and all of those things. So they shy away from politics. Most of the technocrats, Africans, will not get themselves involved in politics, thus allowing some low-quality humans get into the corridors of power and they make decisions that are knee-jerk reactions and based off without data, without facts, and self-serving individuals. So that's where we are. But I think it's time for the new generation to begin to know that you can't get a country or get a continent to move in the right direction if you're going to shy away from politics totally. You need to put yourself out there as quality humans to be in positions of power to then make things happen in the right places in government to then benefit the entire population. So hopefully the generations of our fathers, the baby boomers who took over from the colonial masters, that sort of failed us. They failed us actually. I hope that millennials and Gen Zs see this and then begin to move themselves in the corridors of power and then make the right decisions and implement and be more. Thankfully for the internet and for a bit of more traveling, I think millennials and Gen Zs have seen a bit more of the world and know what is and how things should be done. So hopefully
Yeah.
this would take place on the continent and things will change. So yeah, and I might not blame the baby boomers or our parents because they took over from the colonial master. So they're basically learning on the job anyway. So they might not have done enough, but then so probably learn from their mistakes and then do what we can in our time as well.
When you look at, because I look at stuff that happened with China and with Singapore, and one thing that was very, very key that I saw with helping them develop as much as they have is the fact that the diaspora came back. And do you think that's part of the issue, is that the diaspora, people like me who've, been sheltered away from sort of the cultural aspects of Africa, and there's a lot more like me, trust me, millions, who've been sort of sheltered and protected and told lies and different sort of propaganda that, Africa is bad, stay away. And then when you actually step your foot on the continent, you realize, actually, this is where I feel like I belong, And do you think that that's part of the issue, why we're not able to move as fast as we should be able to, because we're not linking their skill sets from the diaspora, bringing them back, and their resources, bringing them back onto the continent?
All right, I won't lie. One of I think Africa has bred the West brunt of bad press over the years.
Yeah.
And to the advantage of some propagandists who intended to keep it that way so that they can benefit from the opportunities and make the rest of the world blind to the opportunities that apply in the world, on the continent. Mostly, especially those who were taken out of the continent in terms of slavery and all of those things, right? So, but thankfully, lately, there's a lot of education on the internet. And there are many proactive Pan-Africanists who are actually preaching the gospel of the truth of the continent and the opportunities that lie there for everybody, especially those who have African roots, who were taken out forcefully out of the continent, right? I don't know if you know what the Maya, the YouTuber, he does a very good job, originally from Ghana. That's a very good job to highlight what's good in the continent. And Ghanaian governments, especially, so I think there's something that other governments of the continent can learn from the Ghana government, irrespective of political party. That's one thing that's been consistent with Ghanaian governments. They've been more or less very Pan-Africanist and been very much encouraging from the time of there was this thing called Panafest or something way back decades ago that's aimed at targeting African Americans and other Africans in the diaspora and the Caribbean to come back to Ghana, to come back and see what they could do to see, okay, this is where you came from, this is where your slave trade happened, to be able to trace their roots back and see what they can do to help the continent. Ghana is selfish in that regard, so mostly they go to Ghana most of the time, right? So that's something they do, right? So you'd see that there are a lot of communities of Black Americans in Ghana. There are some of them in Pram, some of them in Ibri, Jamaicans as well, right? So that's something that was done. And then lately, there's been a new thing called the Year of Return, right? So that was like it was to mark 300 years after slavery, began, right? So it's more or less a proactive thing done by the Ministry of Tourism of the Ghanaian government, irrespective. It's not about political party. Any government have been doing it, whereby they go to preach to the Africans in the diaspora to come back and see what they came from and what opportunities they can take advantage of. And this is mostly climaxed every year in December. As part of the December Christmas celebration, there's a lot of activities back in Ghana. People actually go there a lot. So there's some of the things being done. So I guess gradually the consciousness is being built, and hopefully other countries on the continent take note of what Ghana has been doing and also begin to do their own way of bringing back Africans in the diaspora and how they could bring their expertise and their experiences to be of benefit to the continent. I think it's very important for that to be actively done, right? So yeah.
Hey bro, I'm just trolling is something that will not just challenge your perspective, but also touch your heart and soul. It's a book that defies convention, blending art and literature into a thought-provoking masterpiece. A reflective piece of provocative art that tackles societal constructs from angles you've never considered. Hey bro, I'm just trolling delves into the very essence of our existence. It questions the technology that surrounds us, challenges our notions of beauty, stares unflinchingly into the eyes of death, and questions the boundaries of freedom. It scrutinized the educational system that molds our very future. This book is a journey, an exploration of shared human experience, and it's a work of art that refuses to be confined by tradition. It's a canvas painted with words, a melody of thought, and a testament to the power of creativity in a world dominated by algorithms and data. Visit moonboycapitalventures.com and get your hands on Hey Bro, I'm Just Trolling today. It's not just a book, it's a movement. Now let's jump back into the show.
Yeah, so when I look at Ghana, and I tend to believe from my understanding and my exposure with a lot of different African countries and cultures, they tend to be a little bit more leaning towards the Pan-Africanism, but I don't think every country is as eager with the Pan-Africanism as in Ghana. So I was wondering, where does that come from? Is it a cultural thing? Is it where did this ideology of Pan-Africanism come from within Ghana?
So it started right from pre-independence. So Ghana's first president is called Kwame Nkrumah. He's one of the known Pan-Africanists, and when he took over, so Ghana is known to be the first sub-Saharan African country to get independence in 1957, March 6, 1957. Ghana was the first sub-Saharan African country to get independence. Ethiopia was never colonized, so we can of all the countries that were colonized, Ghana was the first, right? So, and when he took over, the first speech he made was that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless the total liberation of Africa is realized. That was the first statement he made. So he made sure that the resources that he got after independence were geared towards the independence of many countries, including that of Guinea, Conakry, including that of Zimbabwe. Robert Mugabe, for instance, was a student of Kwame Nkrumah and went back to Zimbabwe to get independence for them. Right, so he was actively involved in the independence of other countries like Tanzania. So he worked with the likes of Julius Nyerere, many other early Koroma of many African first presidents back in those days to make sure that those countries got independence. So you see that majority of the countries got independence just about 3 years after Ghana got independence in 1960, Nigeria. Many countries got independence between 1960 and 1963 because Nkrumah was very active in that regard. So it's something that was ingrained right from the first presidents of the country into the mindset of Ghanaians. So till today, anytime there's a new president, they always, during their speech, you always have a Pan-African element in it. Yeah. Right? So it's ingrained in the embodiment of where Ghanaian. So you can't be, I've never seen a Ghanaian president who isn't Pan-African. It's just rare. You'd have to be Pan-African basically to even become. I mean, it's a default setting, right? So yeah.
So you would say the diplomatic relations within Ghana and comparatively to other countries within Africa are more, I guess, healthy than comparatively to let's say like a Nigeria.
It's a very cordial thing. I mean, that's what it has to be for Ghanaians. I mean, we have to be cordial with continental leadership. Like, there's no other way to it. Yeah.
So what's the relationship then with Singapore and Ghana?
All right. So Lee Kuan Yew, who is the first president of Singapore, was a very good friend of Kwame Nkrumah. Yeah. And they had ideologies on how countries should be developed after independence. So they could have got independence around the same time. So they were peers, right? And then they had the same thought process, the same mindset. So it was that friendship from the first presidents of those two countries that then culminated into a friendship in both countries as well. So yeah.
Oh wow, that's amazing. So I want to shift over and talk about the current payment problems that are happening right now on the continent. And maybe you could speak more to it with what problems are being faced in terms of being able to send money in intercontinentally and intracontinentally.
Okay, so this what is, right? Hold on. So this what is. The payment process in the continent is a bit complicated, especially when it's cross-border between countries, right?
Yeah.
For instance, so I'll give you a practical example. I'm Ghanaian. My parents are Ghanaian, but my siblings and I were born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria. So we did our early education in Lagos, and then at a point we had to be sent back for senior secondary education and university education back in Ghana. But my dad is still in Ghana and still in Nigeria. He's been living there practically his whole life. And there were times when, whilst we're in university, I had to send us money for upkeep and sometimes even school fees, right? So what you would usually do would be to send Naira to Ghana. But then when you send Naira to Ghana, you can't spend naira in Ghana because Ghana will use a different currency, even though it's the same continent, right? So
Mhm.
he goes to the bank and then sends the money. Probably a few weeks, probably like a week or two to resume the semester. And you wouldn't believe that. You believe that most of the time we are way into the semester before we get the money because of the slowness, right? Of when we get the money, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes most of the time it's more expensive. So there are times when he himself physically flew from Nigeria to Ghana to give us the money physically because it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
fast. It was about the same cost because when you are trying to send money from Ghana to Nigeria, you take your money physically to a bank, right?
Yeah.
The bank would have to then send the money to probably Citibank in New York to get US dollars because you can't send naira to Ghana because both countries do not have basal foreign exchange currencies, right? So the bank sends the money to Citibank New York and get US dollars, and then the Citibank New York sends the money probably to Ghana, right?
Yeah.
Before which is then converted to Ghana cedis for the receiver. It takes so much time. There's a lot of friction, there are a lot of third party players there, and therefore means high fees. Right? So that's the
Yeah.
situation right now in terms of trade on the continent, and it sort of has a debilitating effect on how effectively intercontinental trade happens. Even with the single market now, these challenges are still there, right? So that's why we built Cpayant, right, to solve this problem, right? Because I also used to be a banker, right, and even years after I was a student as a banker, the earliest I ever had intracontinental cross-border payments done for my clients was 3 days. Most of the time, it was more than 1 week, right?
Wow.
And years after I left Zenith Bank, I left the bank. Practically the same situation still pertains here, right? So we
Yeah.
built Cpayant to be a mobile app to take care of intracontinental cross-border payments. So instead of you having to wait for more than 1 week, it happens in less than 5 seconds
Yeah.
because we are using permissionless blockchain technology to make that happen.
Yeah.
Right? And the cost is way minimal compared to what you would have had when you use banks, right? So that's basically what we're building and presenting to the market. And it's even become way much urgent because of the single market that we are in. And then the
Yeah.
data from the UN shows that this is a recent data a few months ago shows that the single market would be worth about 1.7 trillion by the year 2030. And that's just about 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Right. So
Wow.
the need for urgent solutions to payment systems intracontinental. Yeah.
You know, one thing I like about Cpayant is that it's solving a problem right now. You
Yes.
know, and I think that's a problem that I see with some founders when I look at the projects that they have, or because I'm also on the investor side too as well, and I'm like, does this solution solve the problem right now? Because I
Yeah.
think we can predict on what's the future and what's going to happen. Like even if you look now at some of the stuff like Elon Musk is doing, and I'm like, it doesn't really pertain to right now, and
Yeah.
so. And so I think you have the same kind of mentality as me, is where like you want to already hit boots on ground, not theoretical, not 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. You want to already build the platform, already have it. And I think you already have the MVPs already ready everything's ready to go, right? With the platform.
Yes, actually, yeah. So
Yeah.
we're ready to go. We have initial uptakers, app users, right? So yeah. So we're finalizing the licensing, and then we are online. We are live. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, man. How long do you think it's going to take for you guys to get fully online?
So it's possible that by the time this podcast comes out, we're already live.
Man, you know one thing I like about you, man, is that you move very, very fast. You're like me, we both think, cut from the same cloth, you move very quickly.
Also,
And
by the time this comes out, we're already live. I'm telling you. So yeah.
You're not playing around, huh? But no, I wanted to ask you: is the problem, because is that problem only happening in West Africa, or is this an entire intracontinental issue? Is this happening in South Africa? It's happening in East Africa. It's happening in North Africa.
The whole continent, like from North Africa to South Africa, east to west, is the whole continent.
Wow.
So that's huge, bro.
Yeah.
1.7 million people right there. Who's it could be solved?
Yeah.
Not all of the 1.7 billion people, not all of them would probably want to do intercontinental payments, but a good number would. And some who actually had no idea that they needed it would realize that, okay, I actually need this. Because as a matter of fact, a lot of people have families across different countries on the continent. They actually do. But because there's no easy way to make those payments happen, they've never seen need for it. But once there's a solution, they'll begin to do that, especially
Yeah.
now that there's a single market, So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And can you talk a little bit about doing business in Africa? Because for the diaspora that's watching this, if I want to go and do business in Ghana, is the steps as simple as just going to go register a business and then having it fired up within a week or 2 weeks? How long does it take? Is it lethargic? Is the process take long, or is it a very short process? Do I need to know people? Is it handshake agreements? Do they do signatures? Do the signatures matter? How does it work?
So it depends on the jurisdiction. Now, what one mistake people make is that they assume because they see black person in Africa, they assume that everybody is the same. You'll be surprised that even in the same country, it can be very diverse. You don't deal with the same people, even just next border, right? So so it depends on the jurisdiction, on the speed you go with. So there are some countries that are very pro speed, like Rwanda, maybe Ghana. It depends, right? So it depends on who you're talking to and what jurisdiction you're trying to play in. So you'd have to really study the jurisdiction and see, okay, how do these guys operate here? You cannot use one cap fit all for every country on the continent. Rwanda and Kenya shares a border, but I can assure you that things play totally different in Kenya than they do in Rwanda. They are not the same, bro. You have to have different mindsets when playing those two countries. So, but one thing is certain that, unfortunately, because of colonial effects, most of Africa is divided based on lingua franca. And when I say lingua franca, it's mostly based on the language of the colonial masters, right? So, majority of the time, when you're dealing with a country, you have to check, is it French speaking? Is it English speaking? Because beyond the language barrier, sometimes the systems are similar. So French speaking countries sort of have similar administrative stuff that mirrors that of France. Right, and then the English countries sort of mirror the US or the UK. So that's one angle you look at it from. Additionally, the level of institutional corruption could determine how fast you go or how slow you go if you decide to go through the laid down procedures. Right.
What do you mean by that?
Thing. So sometimes, depending on the corruption index of a country, going by the laid down procedures could actually be the slower way. And you might be better off knowing somebody who would hold your hand to make things faster for you. It might not be corruption, but then knowing somebody could really help you move a bit faster. Yeah. Right. So that's one thing. But then there's other countries where things work, like Botswana, like Rwanda, where you don't have to know anybody. You do what you have to do and you get it irrespective.
Yeah. So makes sense. And what about, because you did some real estate too as well, like when you were on the continent, and how has that experience been like for you, and how do you see the real estate development happening in Ghana specifically in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I can't speak generally for real estate generally on the continent, but in Ghana that I'm a bit more familiar with is, so there are different kinds of real estate you're looking at. So there are the extremely high-end real estates. You'd be surprised to see real estate that's as expensive as you find in some states in the US. And those are for very extremely high net worth individuals. So obviously, yes. There's still a lot of opportunities of real estate for the middle class. Lots. Right. So it's a matter of being able to provide affordable and quality accommodation for that middle class, that working class, new young adults, and there's an opportunity to make a lot of money in that regard, right? So unfortunately, in places like Ghana, you do not pay for rent monthly. You pay yearly. The shortest lease period you get is probably 1 year. Most of the time, the standard is 2 years deposit.
Interesting. Why do they do that? Why do they do it like that?
I don't know. Is it greed or is it a way to hedge against risk of not payments? I don't know. But then if you have the resources to then set up real estate, minimalist real estate, quality real estate that young adults or new workers could rent, probably on a monthly or on a quarterly basis, they would go for that as opposed to what is there. Right?
Really? So there's the opportunity to penetrate the market there.
It's an opportunity to the middle class, new working class, right? So that is there as well. So that's something that that could be looked at as a way of helping to stem the accommodation needs in over there, right? So that's basically, that's the way I see it. That's an opportunity I've always looked at, and that's something that I think somebody who is smart enough can take advantage of, as opposed to, because a lot of these properties, new properties that spring up in are out of reach for purchase for most of these young adults, because it's mostly priced in US dollars, and you know how depreciative these local currencies are. So it is mostly out of reach for young adults, practically their whole lives. So it's only high net worth individuals that could even afford some of these estate built houses. Right.
Yeah.
So the best way is to provide probably some of these more feasible arrangements in terms of, instead of paying 2 years rent, you could probably pay monthly or quarterly. A lot of them there'll be a lot of uptake for it, seriously. So that's an opportunity I see. Yeah.
Interesting. Airbnb, is it prevalent there too as well?
Yes, it is. I mean,
Yeah.
it is extremely prevalent, considering the fact that, I mean, especially in December, when there's almost everybody's in Ghana, like, so they make a killing there. So yeah, it's prevalent, and they have some. Real estate in Ghana can be expensive depending on where you're looking at. Like, so it's mad. It depends where you're looking at, because there are some really expensive hotels, like that like that have the moving pics and the Kempinskis that are. I'm not here to run down anybody's business, but I feel like they are way too pricey. But then they do get filled up because there's always demand for them. So that's why they keep their prices high. So I believe that if there are more realistically priced real estate in the space as well, someone will make a killing, because even the very expensive ones are making a killing. How much more the ones that are attainable for the middle class? So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And can you talk a little bit, because I don't know if you're familiar, how's the credit-based system working in Ghana specifically? Is it, are people are they financing stuff, or is everything just mainly cash-based, paying stuff straight cash?
Credit-based systems are practically non-existent, mostly the continent-wide. It's mostly cash-based, So another opportunity that someone could get to be trying to figure out how to create a credit-based system. That's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because it's mostly cash-based, mostly cash and carry. There's practically no credit system on the continent. There is, but then it's meh. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Why do you think it hasn't been done yet?
Because the financial institutions, are lazy in terms of gathering proper data. It's easier for them to just use a single brush to paint everybody and do the easiest thing of just lending to corporates that have high volumes, as opposed to doing micro lending, right? They're not ready to put in that effort into doing proper data curation and trying to score everybody based off maybe the job they do, the ability to pay back, credit history. They just tag everybody in the same basket. And then that's an easier way to make money. They're not motivated to be granular in terms of scoring people, right? So if someone is ready to put in the work to get the necessary data, man, that's an opportunity to solve. Yeah.
How prevalent is the diaspora in Ghana?
Very prevalent.
Really?
It's very.
So there's guys like me, the guys that lost their way.
A lot of them, actually. I mean, a lot of them, a lot of prominent guys who have gone back to actually live in Ghana. The likes of Rita Marley, the wife of Bob Marley, lives in Ghana now. A lot of W.E. Du Bois, way back in the civil rights movement, went to live in Ghana. The likes of Malcolm X went to live in Ghana at a point before going back to the US to get shot. Right. So a lot of them, it was very prevalent. Like, it's been like, it's normal. Like, it's not even a conversation. No conversation that is had. It feels like it's normal, right? So no one has that conversation. You just come and settle. That's all.
So okay, so I have a question about Cpayant. So with Cpayant, who are your competitors?
All right, so we have a few competitors. Unfortunately, I might have to give them some publicity, which I was trying to avoid, right? So we have some competitors. We have some competitors. I'm very excited.
You don't have to give them publicity. You let's just say this. Are they doing something exactly the same, or are they doing something similar?
All right. So what they're trying to solve the same issues we have in terms of intracontinental, but you know what? They seem to be more focused on the intercontinental from the West to Africa, even though they sometimes do intra, because it's a bit more of a low-hanging fruit for them. But there's more competition in that regard, right? So that's one.
Yeah.
Additionally, most of them still use traditional tech stack, even though they are not banks, right? So their fees are still high. They are still sort of slow. So they'll tell you that they are fast, but their fast is 48 hours, 2 days, sometimes 3 days. Right.
Yeah.
And then there's one that uses blockchain. I won't mention the name. I like the founder. I won't lie. I actually like him. But I won't mention the name because I won't give you free publicity.
Oh,
he uses blockchain, but the blockchain he uses is more expensive than the blockchain you're using. So in terms of speed, they're not as fast as we are, but they are still fast. But then they're still pretty much expensive, right? So they even charge you for depositing in your wallets, which is I'm like,
oh wow.
So that's where we are. But I won't mention the name. I like the guy. I like the founder because he's a visionary, and I actually like him, but I'm not gonna give him publicity.
maybe potential strategic partnership in the future.
Yes, so it's something we do actively. So we do forge partnerships actively. I do not believe in competing because the sky is big for everybody to fly. That's how I see it. So I believe in collaborations that makes the space better. Ultimately, the user or the customer is supposed to be the winner, right? So whatever we can do to collaborate, we can all exist in the same space and still thrive, right? And not just thrive very well because there's a lot of opportunities, really. So always open to collaborations. And actually, as it stands, we actually have some collaborative partners, but because of NDAs and all of those things, you don't have to mention the name. So we do actually collaborate with some of our competitors as it stands right now.
Yeah. Are you flexible and open to expanding at some point then to instead of intercontinental payments too as well?
Yes.
Okay, so that's something that you guys are thinking about too as well.
Actually, yes, and you'll be surprised on the kind of intercontinental angle we have.
Yeah, is something you can speak about?
The intercontinental angle we have is not what you think. It's something totally unexpected. Totally unexpected. So it's usually not something. So it's from the corridor is a region that people totally overlook. Totally.
Yeah.
So people know the regular from the west to Africa, but this corridor is totally overlooked. Yeah.
Oh
that's
man.
what I have to say.
Okay. we'll leave it there then, man. Hey, any closing thoughts before we go, man?
I mean, basically, I believe that my closing thought is that people should be excited about the single market that Africa presents, in the sense that even though it might not be as developed or as advanced as the Eurozone, the opportunities far outweigh the Eurozone in terms of the size of the population, the age of the population, the demography. 65% or thereabouts are people below the age of 25. That shows you the potential we have in the next 10 years, right? Thus, there's a need for the diaspora to come back and take advantage because this is the right time to plug in. And whilst the diaspora is coming back to take advantage of what's happening, they must also come back with a spirit of learning and patience. Because you would have to unlearn what you think you know. You do not come to think, oh, I know more than these guys, so I'm coming to teach them. You're not coming to teach anything, bruv. You're coming to sit down, settle in, understand, and then see. These are the shortfalls that these people have. Then let me bring this expertise I have to serve the people for the benefit of all. Yourself, ultimately, the continent then. And the people that make up the continent. So that's my closing thought. So because the human capital is much more important than natural resource. What does Singapore have in terms of natural resource? Practically nothing. What they have is human capital.
Yes.
Right. So and then they have a culture that they follow. So that's the reason why you come in, understand the culture of the people, and then use the culture as a basis on which you build something new to service the population, right? So culture is important as well.
Man, we got to do this again, man. This has been great, man. Honestly, like, man, I enjoyed this so much, man. I appreciate you for coming on, man. I know we've been planning to do this for a minute now, and
I know, right? I know.
Yeah, but we
Thanks
got to
a
do
lot.
it again.
Yeah, sure. We'll do it again. I mean, probably a couple of months from now, when we've tired servicing the single market zone of the continent, and I'm actually excited about what the single market would give us. So let's see how it goes. Hopefully, and we'll be able to take our places in the right space. We're able to contribute our quota to the development of the continent, so that there'll be less cage or less disdain when Africa is talked about, because that's not what Africa is really.
Yeah.
There's much more opportunities, right? Yeah, and some of the most comfortable Black people live on the continent. They never move to the West. You'd be surprised to know that those who actually live comfortable never move to the West.
Yeah.
But people don't know this story. So yeah,
Yeah.
because the size of intercontinental payments, even as it stands right now, intercontinental
Mm.
African payments is 7 times larger than the size of intercontinental. That's from the West to Africa. People
Wow.
don't know this.
That's
But that
crazy.
market, even with the inefficiencies and everything, is 7 times larger. And according to Statista data, we're just scratching the surface, because it's supposed to be 10 times what it's supposed to be if there were efficient service providers like Cpayant in the space, right? So,
Wow.
so the opportunities are endless.
Where can people find Cpayant and you on the internet?
All right. So if you want Cpayant, you go to www.cpayant.com on the internet. We have our app on Play Store for Google and App Store for iOS users. You can search for it. Myself, you can go to my LinkedIn and then reach out.
Perfect, man. I'll leave the links down below in the show notes, man. This concludes another great episode of the Mooncast, man. I appreciate you for coming on again, Emmanuel. It's been a pleasure, bro.
Sure.
And
Same.
peace, man.